Hi, everybody. John Haldy here, and I am delighted to have Steve Crawford with me for the first part of what we hope to be a really successful series aimed at helping new contractors understand the FedEx line haul space. Steve, welcome.
Good morning. Well, I'm glad to be here.
You've been very kind to volunteer to do this. I kind of arm twisted you. I hope your shoulder wasn't pulled out of its socket.
I'm good. I'm good.
Would you mind sharing with the group a little bit about your background so they understand why we're lucky to have you here today?
Well, luck is maybe a matter of, we'll let them decide that. But I'm really what you could say is a lifelong trucker. My dad was in the trucking business. I was riding in trucks when I was young. I actually drove a semi before I drove a car. This is way back many, many, many years ago. My dad took ill while I was in high school, so I was able to get out of school early to help in the warehouse and whatnot. And went through life, developed as a young man, and started working with him as he was able to retire, work for a few other companies, realized I'm geared to being an entrepreneur as opposed to being a corporate employee. And so 30 years ago, I started my own business, and I've been with FedEx Ground now for a little over 26 years. And so this is really the thing that I do. This is the thing that I understand is trucking and transportation.
And you've got a pretty big operation, right?
Well, it's significant. There's other ones that are bigger, but I guess let's say quality is, we want to be excellent. We don't necessarily need to be the biggest one around to show excellence. And I did sell off my St. Louis operation earlier in 2021, thinking that I was going to start slowing down towards retirement, but that's not in the cards right now. And so we've built up to where we have, we're running about 28 routes, and we have 32 tractors.
And I've heard through the grapevine that you've been really generous in the past in helping other contractors when they've been looking for knowledge and experience and wisdom. Can you share a little bit about what you've done?
Well, thank you for that. My name got out through FedEx and other circles that if you had a question, call Steve Crawford. And if somebody needs to call me, send me an email or anything like that. And at the end of the program here, we can leave my contact information. But people have called with the question, hey, I want to do this, but I need to know, how do I register my truck? What do I do about insurance? What do we do about these things? And a lot of times it's just a matter of pointing them in the right direction, say, go do this, go do that. So that service, if you want to call it that, really started organically. It's not like I just said, hey, I'm going to go start a company to do this. We're just here to help others get from point A to point B.
So your permission, Steve, here's what I'd like to do. A new contractor has a ton of things that they need to be aware of in a hurry, and it's hard to keep track of all the moving parts. For this series of conversations, can I role play the new contractor? I think I'm really well fitted to it because other than doing software to help you understand the financial side of what's going on in your business, I know nothing about operations, so I'm as green as they come. So are you comfortable with me just being the new guy and you teaching me?
Yep, that'd be fine.
Okay, so let's imagine I just got the letter from FedEx and I'm going to be starting in 2-3 weeks. Where should we start? I know I need trucks. Is that a good enough place to start the conversation?
Well, that can be part of it, or maybe more important is what are you going to do when you get the trucks? Because acquiring a truck is going to be, you're going to go out and buy it, you're going to lease it, you're going to find the brand that you want, and that might be dictated or determined by availability. But let's just say you're able to secure, you've got the specifications of a truck. It has to be equipped to transport 80,000 pounds. It has to have all the safety technology requirements from FedEx, and that's probably a whole list for another conversation. But because one of the things that you're going to have to do as a new contractor is get that truck legal to be on the road. And there's at least 4 different things that we're going to have to walk through so that that truck is ready to operate legally, that if you get stopped by the DOT that you passed our test.
Hold on, quick question. You said you got to get the specs. Who do I get the specs from?
What FedEx within their contract, and even when you're, if you're starting as a new contractor, maybe you've purchased an existing company, or you've been awarded, they had an RFI and you've been awarded a growth opportunity. Within the contract and within the either station management or BDS, they'll have what the specifications are of a truck. And it basically is going to be a 2 or 3 axle tractor that's capable of pulling the maximum amount of weight. But the specifications for safety coming from FedEx is it has to have what we call FCAM, it's forward collision avoidance and mitigation. It has to have lane departure warning, forward collision warning. We have to have forward facing and driver facing cameras, and we have to use an electronic logging device, ELD. And the 2 choices right now, as of today, presenting this are Omnitrax, and there was a company that used to be called PeopleSoft or something like that, and I think they've changed their name to something else. But again, the compliant the issues there will come from FedEx for the contractor. They should be able to ask for, give me a list of specifications for the trucks so that I can acquire the right equipment.
You said there's 2 ELD vendors, meaning there's only 2 vendors, or there's only 2 approved by FedEx?
Good point. 2 approved by FedEx. There's many other ones out there, but we can't use them without FedEx ultimately approving that process.
Okay, and if I'm evaluating this stuff, it would be someone at FedEx who would hold my hand a little bit to make sure I have the current information?
They will give you the information. I don't know that they're going to hold your hand.
Okay.
A lot of they're big on the independent contractor separation, so some of it you got to figure out on your own.
Okay. And so you mentioned there's 4 things to then, once you acquire a truck, or if you're getting it, if I'm going to buy the truck from the person who sold me the routes, if I'm buying routes, I then have to get this truck legal from FedEx's mind and into their system?
That's correct.
How does that process work? Do you want to dig into that now, or?
Yeah, well, just like any other time, if I sold you a car, I bought your car, or whatever, we're going to transfer the title. And each state is different, so you and I can't sit here and pretend to be experts on 48 different jurisdictions of what the titling requirements are. But in general, when you get a title for a commercial vehicle like this that's in interstate commerce, many states have a sales tax exemption for tractor trailers in interstate commerce. And even if you're operating within a state, you know, Texas is a big state and you're going to just run back and forth between, say, Dallas and Houston, you're hauling packages that originated outside of the state of Texas. So even though you don't leave the state of Texas, you're still considered or part of an interstate operation. So when you, my suggestion is check with your state trucking association. You can just Google your state sales tax exemption, interstate commerce, something like that, and it'll tell you what the requirements are. Usually there's a form and you have to be able to provide some type of a DOT number, which we use FedEx's number for that. And so the number one thing to own a vehicle, you got to have a title. And then once you have the title, then it's going to be, we have to register it. Well, you can go get your own base plate registration with the International Registration Plan, it's IRP. Or you can go through FedEx. If you go through FedEx, you send them a copy of the title and other supporting documentation that you have to have. And then they will provide you with a base plate that's authorized for all the jurisdictions to run in and charge you accordingly for it. The thing about International Registration Plan and base plates is that they have an annual registration, and I'm just going to make the numbers easy. Let's just say it's $1,800 a year to register a truck. It might be more, might be less, but at $1,800, you divide it by 12, it's $150 a month. So if there's 10 months left in the year, you might only be charged $1,500 as opposed to the full $1,800. And all the states are different. There's nothing that says that it's going to be, per year, that it's going to be a calendar year from January to December. One of the jurisdictions, Indiana, that FedEx uses is from March 1st until February 28th.
So if FedEx does it for me, they pay it and bill it back to me through my settlement?
Right. Yeah. The cost will be split into, I think right now they're doing it as 2 payments, and they will be deducted from your settlement.
Okay. And so we've gone through the base plate thing, we've gone through the titling. What are the other hurdles you got to get through to get this truck to the point where FedEx says, yep, you can bring it to the yard and start hauling things when you start?
Well, and actually, a sandwich between the two is we have to have FedEx will, on their list will say Form 2290. That's an IRS form, and it's for what's called Federal Highway Use Tax. That tax runs from July 1st until June 30th. You make a submission to the IRS, you get the receipt back that shows that it has been paid at the IRS, and the FedEx has to have a copy of that receipt in order to get the base plate. The state will not issue the plate and the registration paperwork without that proof that federal highway use tax has been paid. And again, it's $550 a year. And if you go in to pay it, like right now, we're in January, you would only have to pay half a year because it'll expire June 30th. And then the new year will start over again.
Is that per truck?
That is per truck, yes.
Okay.
And it's a flat rate too. It doesn't matter how many miles you travel. If you drive a lot, if you drive a little, it's $550 a year per truck.
And I pay that. FedEx doesn't pay it on my behalf.
No, you have to do that yourself.
Okay, so we've got
a little twist to this too that we have to add. You can't just submit this to the IRS. The IRS requires that you go through a third party. I use a third-party company that's just outside of Charlotte, down in I think it's Rock Hill, South Carolina. And you just go onto their website, set up an account, and when it goes to pay the tax, you can put it on a credit card. You can ACH it, mail in a check to the IRS, whichever option you choose.
Okay. So I've got this federal tax paid. I've got my base plates. Now I'm just allowed to show up and say, give me a trailer. I'm good to go.
Well, the next thing, FedEx, in your contract acceptance, this election of base plates will be one of the things that you've determined already with FedEx. The other one is going to be for fuel taxes. And fuel taxes, let me give a real quick history going way back, 30, 40 years ago and more. All these trucks were running back and forth between the states. You fuel up in this state and you're burning it in this state. So it's like, hey, you bought fuel in Iowa, but you're wearing out our highway here in Illinois, and that's not fair. So they came up with all these different states had their own taxation formulas. And in the, I'm going to say it must have been in the earlier mid 80s, they started out with what they call the International Fuel Tax Agreement, IFTA, IFTA, and Canada and the United States are participating in that. So you just register once with your base state and then keep track of your miles, keep track of your fuel purchases, and then the appropriate amount of tax is paid. Again, you can elect to have FedEx do that reporting, or you can do it on your own. For most new people, they may decide that they want to go ahead with having FedEx do it. There's another level of paperwork there. You got to keep track of your miles, odometer readings, and things like that. And there's vendors out there that you can introduce them to that provide that service, and so that there is a solution for them. But they will have to have little stickers about that square on their side of their truck for whatever they're based in. If it's FedEx, it's going to be Pennsylvania. I do my own. We have Missouri stickers on our truck. But either way, to go down the highway, if you're stopped by the DOT in that state, they're going to see that. Do you have an IFTA registration? Do you have your, are you set up to pay your fuel taxes?
So for me as a new guy, I'll probably let FedEx provide that IFTA sticker.
Yeah, and you can always opt out of that election. It makes sense to do it at the beginning of a new quarter. Like, for example, if you wanted to start it this year, the time to make that election and notify FedEx would have been in December. If somebody's just getting started now, they may want to go for 6 months or a year, but you can't make that change on the first date of a new quarter. You want to make that election, probably 4 to 6 weeks ahead of time.
As a new guy, would you encourage me to just start using FedEx, or do you think I should do it on my own to start with?
I think as most new people, if you're just getting started with this, and this might be a new industry to you, let them do it. You're going to go through some frustrations maybe on the record keeping or whatever, but you'll understand what needs to be done. Adding one more layer of bureaucracy at the beginning of a new venture might be more harmful than it's helpful.
Okay. So now we've got our IFTA sticker. Now we can run, or we need to do some more hoops to jump through?
Well, those are for the truck to be legal, you got to have a title, you got to have a registration, which is base plate. You got to pay your federal highway use tax to get that far, and then have your IFTA stickers. Your truck is ready to go. Now, FedEx will have a checklist of that, plus other things that need to be sent in. Got to have proof of insurance, proof that you have the safety technology items that we mentioned earlier. They'll have an acknowledgement of lease agreement. So they'll have a different hoops to jump through. One thing that's required, we said there was 4. Well, actually, let's make it 5. You have to have a federal annual vehicle inspection. You'll hear it referred to as FAVI. Sometimes it's just annual vehicle inspection report, AVIR. FedEx will require a copy of that annual inspection. That needs to be done by a certified inspector. So usually you go to a truck shop, any of these repair shops that you go to, Mack, Volvo, Freightliner, Peterbilt, Kenworth International, whoever. They'll be able to do DOT inspections. There's a lot of independent shops that are able to do that. But that is one of the paperwork requirements that you're going to have to send in, along with the other 4 things that we described earlier, is proof of that inspection. And then the process then will be is FedEx gives you this list. You submit everything that's on the checklist. There's even going to be things like taking pictures of the truck, making sure, we were talking about specifications earlier. You got to have the pintle hook on the rear of the truck with D-rings, they call it, to hook the safety chains to it. We have to have pictures of that. And so from your station management, you will get this checklist and just put the checklist together. And that gets submitted to your Hover station wherever you're working. They send it into headquarters, and they come back with, this truck is approved, this truck is ready for dispatch. And now you can hook to a trailer and go. For the truck.
I heard from someone that there sometimes be issues with truck numbering. Get a temp number. What's that?
Yeah, well, when you submit, first of all, when you're approved and FedEx is going to submit for paperwork, you're going to get a 6-digit truck number that's assigned to your truck. And sometimes if you have to use something on a temporary basis, FedEx will do what's called a trip lease. It's a less than 30-day lease, and they assign a different number. But for the purpose of being a permanent contractor, you will have a permanent assigned number to that truck. And when you take the pictures of the truck, that number needs to be on there.
Okay. What else should I know about trucks?
Well, what we discussed there is probably it for the regulatory compliance. Of course, you're going to have insurance. FedEx is going to require a certificate of insurance for your non-trucking liability and your physical damage. Also, as an employer, you're going to be required to have work comp insurance, and you'll have to be able to provide a certificate that you've got work comp insurance. And those protect your company and your truck combined.
Okay, then what else should I be thinking about as a new guy when it comes to trucks?
Well, having it equipped, again, we talked about specifications. You may want to talk to your dealer. Do you have all the things that you need? You got to have your triangles, which is, you see when a guy's broke down alongside the road and they have those triangles out on the ground. You have to have those in the truck. That's a requirement. You got to have a working fire extinguisher. The inspections that we talked about, have that ready to go. Just having your truck road ready. I think one of the things that happens after the fact, one of the contractual requirements is that you have to submit monthly maintenance reports to FedEx. So any work that you do to the truck, keep a record, keep a receipt, and you just have to scan them, and then there's a form to fill out that you just summarize what is the repair work you did. The reason for that is it's a DOT requirement. The federal DOT requires the motor carrier, and of course, in this case, it's FedEx, but they require the motor carrier to keep records of all maintenance performed. Well, FedEx, in order to comply, makes that a contractual obligation for us.
So you mentioned something, and this has confused me. I want to make sure I understand it. The DOT authority, it's FedEx, but it's my truck. How does that work?
Well, going clear back to when we had the Interstate Commerce Commission, then it moved forward towards the DOT. The Interstate Commerce Commission was sunsetted back in the 70s or 80s. There's always regulation, and so for trucking regulation, FedEx is authorized, and it's FedEx Ground specifically, is authorized to conduct business in the United States as a package carrier. And anything that it does has to be in compliance with the DOT regulations. Now, you can choose to buy your own trucks and hire your own drivers, or you can go the independent contractor route, which they've done with us, and they contract with us. But we still, via FedEx or FedEx via us, either way you want to look at it, has to complete whatever the DOT requirements are. FedEx has to comply, but that obligation, burden, whatever you want to call it, shifts to us. So DOT regulations say you have to have maintenance records. We're part of FedEx as a contractor, not as an employee, but as a contractor. The contract is very specific that we have to meet those obligations.
True or false, if I own the truck, but I'm under FedEx's DOT authority, could I get a phone call from someone outside of FedEx and say, hey man, I know that truck's sitting still during the day, you're only running at night. How about you haul some freight for me that's not FedEx? Can I do that?
The short answer is yes. The qualifier of that is yes with limitations, or yes with responsibilities. And when that truck is operating on the road, FedEx is ultimately responsible for what happens with that truck. If you cover up the FedEx signs and put lease to XYZ Trucking, and you do, which would be a trip lease for them that day, now that day, that truck under a trip lease is contracted to this XYZ Trucking, and you could haul for them, but you still got to keep track of your miles, still got to keep track of whatever it is that's a regulatory requirements. When you get done with that trip, you take that sign off, and now your FedEx sign is back on there. So yes, you can do it, but you have to be very careful to do it legally. If you would do anything and cause an accident or anything like that, and they come back and sue FedEx, oh gosh, it'd be disastrous.
So I met someone once who said, I went ahead and got my own DOT authority and I bypassed using FedEx's. What's that about?
Were they still a FedEx contractor, or did they just go out on their own?
No, they were a FedEx contractor. So that he said he had his own DOT authority, but he used those trucks to haul for FedEx as well. But he could freight, third-party freight.
I actually did that a few years ago, and where I said to XYZ Trucking, well, it just so happens that I own XYZ Trucking and I also own my contracting company. So I'm just leasing to myself. The same set of rules would apply. And so a contractor that goes out, he's got Corporation A that's contracted to FedEx. He establishes Corporation B that has DOT authority, has all the insurance requirements and everything. Again, he can lease the truck from company A to company B, but you got to have your documentation, you got to have your compliance, you got to make sure that you cover up FedEx and show the DOT number and the name, whatever, of whatever Corporation B is. And so rather than him going out to lease to, like I said, the XYZ Trucking, he developed his own broker relationships, he developed his own customer relationships, and he uses the truck for that. I did, as I said, from for 3 years, it was 2017, 18, and 19, I did that. I exited that business because it was starting to decline in 2019, but that was just a personal choice.
As a new guy, would you recommend I stay away from that unless I've got someone experienced guiding me through it?
I would stay away from it for, say, maybe anywhere from the first 6 to 18 months. Get yourself totally established in understanding what's going on at FedEx. I started with, it was RPS at the time, in June of 1995. And seriously, it was 18 months before I really understood the system of how everything worked, because I was set on, here's how we do it over in this segment of the industry. And FedEx, you're really joining part of a network that's a distribution network, and we're really, as FedEx contractors, we're in the fulfillment business, and they may need lane from point A to point B covered. Learning and becoming an expert, if you will, becoming very well established at what you do at FedEx. if you're in this for the long haul, you want to understand it real well. And then, different people have different skill sets. When they're ready to branch out into the other, then fine, approach that. But I think trying to start two things at once, unless you've had a long career in trucking and know all these regulations, the chances of making a mistake are great, and those mistakes can be very detrimental. You can even call it fatal. I don't mean human life and death. Certainly an accident could be that, but you can just put the kiss of death on your company by making a mistake.
Gotcha. Steve, we're kind of pushing up against the time we had allotted. Is this a good natural point to wrap up trucking, or is there anything else you want to get into this segment that we're talking about?
I think this pretty well takes care of it from the actual physical truck standpoint. As you mentioned, other times we're going to need to talk a little more about the history of the industry. We're going to need to talk about the different insurance requirements, different types of coverages, things like that. There's a multitude of things that we need to know as contractors. But what we summarized earlier, get your title, pay your federal highway use tax, get your base plates either on your own or through FedEx, and probably as a new contractor, you'll go with FedEx. I think that makes sense. You get your fuel tax registration, the IFTA, again, taking that FedEx election, and then be ready to, anytime you're ready to shift, get out and do any of those things on your own, you can. But those things that I just described there makes your truck legal. And of course, your federal inspections and all the other things you got to do to create a truck file. That's going to be what's necessary to submit to FedEx so that you've got a fleet that's authorized and ready to go.
Is it okay if we share your contact info with the folks watching?
Yes, that would be fine. And probably right here, my cell phone number is 314-574-5930. And an email address to use is just Steve Crawford 555 at Gmail. We got some other ones, but we can put those on the website and whatnot. If somebody wants to call me, I'm more than willing to take a call. It might be wise to text me first because a lot of unknown numbers are solicitors that I don't want to talk to. So if somebody wants to talk to me, that's great, but maybe send me a text first.
Yeah, and I would guess with 28 trucks, you're often rather busy and you'll have to get back to folks.
Well, I am, but the truth is, and this is probably another topic, is I've hired good people. And I have some outstanding people that take care of things for me on a daily basis. I could not run this size of business unless I had a really great team working with me. That's probably a whole nother video series, is how do you attract and retain good help?
Well, great segue. If anybody's watching this and they have ideas for things that they'd like to hear Steve's thoughts on, please, there'll be a way to contact Steve directly. We're going to put my contact info. We do want to hear back from you because this is going to be a living, evolving series. And if you've got feedback about things you think we should be talking about or not talking about, please let us know. And we're going to do our best to try to address your requests in future editions of this. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time today. I'm looking forward to doing more of these with you, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you. My pleasure. Have a good weekend also. Take care.